Jimmy, why did you choose to be a specialist in Mitsubishi ductless heating and cooling systems, and what do you gain by not trying to just install every brand?
We have. I personally have been installing Mitsubishi brand for over 20 years. I would say first and foremost, Mitsubishi stands behind their product. Right? We've all had our problems. I would tell you, at a corporate level, Mitsubishi really backs up their contractor. Right? Whether it's sending out service technicians from their side, trying to figure out what's going on. I've seen them come in and just replace whole systems. So um, they've really partnered up with their contractors and really stood behind them and always done the right thing from what I have seen. Right, I've past history. We installed over 400 plus of these units per year, and we couldn't even roll one service van full time. So that just goes to show you, like, quality of this stuff. It's amazing. I have it in my own house, in my own offices. I'm not tied to this brand by contract. I choose this brand. Um, it's great. It's really good stuff.
Where do maybe jack of all trades type of contractors tend to go wrong with ductless specifically?
That's a big one right there. I would say sizing. Sizing is everything. Starting with a manual J, you really have to know how to do a manual J, and so that's 50%. I would say 50% of these home visits and sizing is the manual J. We figure out what does the house need, what is it calling for, what are the homeowner's goals, and the second part of that, which a lot of people miss, even professionals, is matching the equipment to that manual J. Right? This is a package system that does both heating and cooling, right? So you really have to look at its high and its low, right? So a load calculation is going to tell you, okay, this house needs 30,000 BTUs to heat it, but it only needs 12,000 BTUs to cool it. Cool. So now we go over to the equipment selection, and you really have to find something that falls in between both of those marks. What we see a lot of contractors do is just going into houses, counting rooms, and then selecting this monster compressor just because that's how many rooms match the compressor. But the minimum is triple the house load, and it just short cycles. So I would say first and foremost, proper sizing. That's a real heavy hitter. And second, I would say drains, condensate drains. We see them. I'm not going to say every day, but at least two a week, where they're back pitched. There's mold. It just gets ugly, right? If they're not drained properly, these things, it could turn into a nightmare. So
You mentioned short cycling. What is that, and what kind of problems can you have when you oversize a system?
yeah, it's everything. So short cycling, it's everything bad that you'll read about heat pumps, and these contractors really give these heat pumps a bad name. Short cycling is a system just being either oversized, either over or undersized, right? So it's just putting too much air into the room too quick, and it satisfies the unit prematurely, and it turns it back on. So you got a system that's just constantly going on and off, on and off, on and off. And what that's doing to first of all, the electric bill is just turning it on and off, on and off, on and off. It's just causing it to go sky high. The second thing that's doing is not doing a proper. Um, it's not. It's not conditioning the space properly, right? It's not pulling the air out and doing it even and slowly like we want it to. A lot of the times, it's causing wet walls. We see, mold issues. It's a complete nightmare when they're not sized right. Short cycling is it's bad.
What does a specialist know about Mitsubishi sizing and line set practices and setup that somebody who just generalizes and maybe works with a lot of different brands they might miss?
Us as a Mitsubishi specialist, all of my guys go through factory training. All of my guys have been in the field for many years doing this. So I'd tell you, there's certain rules with certain compressors. I know every Mitsubishi rule off the back of my hand, um, and should every other contractor, in my opinion. So there's certain line lengths that we have to follow. There's certain heights where a condenser, if you're going to mount it, let's say we're looking at a brownstone and the units are going under it. There's certain heights that are going to matter there. Every bend that you put in the pipe is going to take away from the eventual maximum line length that were required by factory. So I'm not saying the system's not going to work if you exceed that. You're going to avoid your warranty and burn out the compressor. And when a professional comes out to look at it like myself and tries to file under warranty, they're not going to allow it because it's just not within warranty specs or manufacturer specs.
So by not specializing in one particular brand, you tend to the contractor tends not to be able to memorize all of those rules because every different brand has its own rules, and so they're maybe mistaking. Oh yeah, we can do that, and then they forget. Oh no, that's not what Mitsubishi wants for their systems.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, every brand's going to have their own rules and their own, if we look at equipment sizing, like what we just talked about on a turn up, turn down, the ratios of that system, how low it can go, how high it can go, all of that stuff changes widely from different brands. So focus in, laser beam focused on one brand really gives us the upper hand to know what we got. We know we're properly sized. We know we're proper, line lengths and bends. We're not second guessing. We're not out in the field going, oh, maybe this will work. Maybe, will they cover it under warranty? Who knows? We're 100% when we leave that job, we're good to go.
If a homeowner is looking at multiple companies, maybe different brands of ductless systems, how should they compare them beyond just the price and the number of BTUs?
I would say the Mitsubishi brand really speaks for itself. I would go online, do a little bit of homework on that. I think I don't really have to sell that. It's gonna speak for itself, but I would see how long that other brand's been in the heat pump industry, right? Maybe they make other things and have a big name, but not really in this market. We see that a lot. We see some heavy hitter brands coming into this industry that just don't have the capabilities that Mitsubishi has, right? So everybody talks about 100%, capabilities at X amount of temperature. Oh, my system can operate down to minus 30, minus 20, whatever the number is. But when we look at the charts, right, it really speaks for itself. Mitsubishi systems are going to give 100% heat some of these systems down to minus 10 and operate down into the minus 20 ranges and still give a good percent of that compressor. Just amazing equipment. If you really look at the specs in the engineering charts, it's going to speak for itself, but it's just amazing.
So with other brands, you might end up at that minus 10 temperature rather than getting 100% of the heating capacity. You're only getting 70% of the heating capacity or 50% of the heating capacity. And so then that's going to just cost you more money.
You got it. And it's not going to heat the house. So again, a lot of these customers in the Boston, Massachusetts area are after these rebates, and contractors are putting these in unknowingly with these engineering charts. They're not really looking at where is 100% heat, right? They're just head focused on, oh, the system operates down to minus crazy. But when it's a cold snap like what we just had here, and the system won't keep up, it's because of the equipment. It's nothing to do with anything else besides the equipment. Just is not size, right? It loses 50, 60, 70% size anything after 15 degrees. So you size a system for the load, now you're 50% smaller on that cold day, right? So it really matters. Brand matters.
Are there any common myths that you hear about Mitsubishi systems or even ductless systems in general that people should be aware of? And what do you say to those myths?
Yeah, I see everything, and from the good to the bad to the ugly. We tell it straight. We see a lot of contractors, telling customers that they run really cheap, and they don't. Every scenario is different. If a customer has oil, we'll run cheaper than that system. If a customer has a very high efficient, let's just say gas system that's modulating and all these great things, we might not run cheaper than that system. So again, we just want to be upfront and honest, with these homeowners, and not try to sell them something that it's not. So I would say that's one of the big ones is the operating cost. Customers hear this or that. 40% more efficient doesn't translate into 40% less to operate. It's more efficient because it's kind of creating its own energy, right? It's pulling in air and using the heat or AC that's, I shouldn't say AC, but the cooling that's in that air, kind of dispersing it through it. But those are a few myths that I hear. Those are the heavy hitter ones, yeah.